Ladies and gentlemen, our keynote presentation is all about international perspective from the lens of utilities, investors and ecosystem players. And it will be delivered by Mr. Sudhanshu Gupta, who is the Partner Power and Utilities Emerging Markets Boston Consulting Group. Let me take you through a short bio of Mr. Sudhanshu Gupta. Sir is a partner in Boston Consulting Group and is based out of Madrid, Spain. His more than 2-decade experience spans across power sector in various emerging markets. He works extensively with investors, utilities, supply chain players, development partners, etc. on the subject of digital and smart grid, smart metering, innovation. He has extensively worked in emerging markets in Latin America, Africa, Middle East and Asia. Prior to migrating to Spain, Sudhanshu sir held various leadership roles in India in organizations like EY, Microsoft, etc. Sudhanshu is an electrical engineer honors and MBA by education and carries various certifications like PMP from PMI USA and Energy Manager from BEE India. Let's welcome Mr. Sudhanshu Gupta on the stage with a huge round of applause.
But I am currently residing in Spain. I work for a company called Boston Consulting Group. We are a leading management consultants globally, and we have a good footprint in India as well. Smart metering is a topic which is very near to me, and I have been working on this topic for last 10 years, starting with India, but more importantly than working in developed countries and emerging markets. So when the organizers of the event reached out to me, it was very tough for me to pick up a topic on which I can speak, and I thought that while there will be so many dignitaries talking about India generally, it's also important to understand what does it mean from an international perspective. And the moment we talk about international perspective, we talk about either the utilities, who are the procurer, or the investors who invest in the various parts of the ecosystem, whether it's a meter, whether it's technology, and so on and so forth. And also equally importantly with the governments and the other stakeholders. And that's why I am talking about a topic called, from various lenses, how do we see smart metering as a topic in emerging markets. I'm happy to take questions, but after once I am done with the presentation. What you see right now on the screen is a global perspective, and apologies if I disappoint you because I'm not going to talk about India. The whole idea is to bring up international perspective, more specifically around Asia and Africa. What you see on the screen is a high-level view of how is smart metering in various countries, geographies. At some places you see dark green places like this, which is US, where is more than 80% penetration, and then you have areas like Africa, India, and so on and so forth, where you have less than 10% penetration. Couple of messages on this slide. Number one, smart metering is picking up. The growth of smart metering, CAGR, as we call it in the management language, is much more in the emerging markets as compared to developed markets. Second message is, if you look at some part like the dark green, which is like US and maybe a bit of a China, where we are all the southern Europe where I live, we see a second wave of smart metering. So we had smart metering 10-15 years back, and now we have a new refresh. So that's how the slide looks like, and what it means is that smart metering is a topic which is going to stick. And if we were to really see why smart metering, but I won't go into technical. Obviously, in a country like India where you have high efficiency losses, smart metering has a strong business case, but that's not the only case in other places where losses are less. So we typically see, and I won't get into a lot of details, all the details, but broadly, when we talk about smart metering, we talk about 6 dimensions. The first one is whether it's a mandatory or it's optional, or it's a voluntary deployment. So you can see the flags which say that in a country including India, it's mandatory. We have an ambition set for 250 million smart meters, and so is in the other countries. But if you look at Germany, where it's partially mandatory, and then voluntary, you have many countries like including South Africa and so on and so forth. The second dimension that we look at is on the deployment responsibility, who implements. Like, so we have either the distribution company, the DISCOM does it, which is network operator, or a retailer or third party like India, or a hybrid structure. Another important thing for smart metering from an emerging market is who pays for smart metering, because it's not a cheap solution, it comes at a cost, right? Who funds the smart metering journey? In many countries, you will see it's by retribution by invoice, that means consumer has to pay for it at the end of it. However, in a country like India or where losses are beyond a particular threshold, it is paid by the gains and efficiencies, and then there is some government support and there is some hybrid structure. And then we have deployment goal, deployment duration, and so on and so forth. So what this chart shows you is that smart metering is happening globally in different form and fashion. It's not only the way it's happening in India. And just to give you a perspective, I think it's an important chart because if you look at it from an investor perspective, I as an investor will put money, I have many options to put money. The question is, should I put the money on value on smart metering? And number two, even if I have to put money on smart metering, should I put it on a comms player, or should I put it on a meter manufacturer, and so on and so forth. And to answer that question, what we said was, okay, let's see where the deployments are happening. The chart shows you yearly installations in million for every region. We have a breakup country-wise, but I wanted to capture at a region-wise. If you see, Asia is leading the pack. And when we talk about Asia, it's dominantly India, Malaysia, and few other places. What we foresee is from an investor perspective that if I put my money, X billion dollars into a particular value chain player who is operating in Asia, I see a growth as compared to if I put the money into a player who is operating in US or other regions. Asia, for your information, this is illustrative numbers. Asia looks like around a 15% overall AMI growth by 2030. And we are looking at around 70 million meters electricity meters, 70 million meters annual installation across Asia, right? And that means that countries like India and few other places will see a lot of growth. As an investor, I also look at it as long-term sustainability. In India, at the moment, when we talk about smart meter, we say it's an electricity smart meter, right? If I do a poll, 95% or 99% of people will say it's electricity. But the way investors see it is in the other India plus, where what we are seeing is that smart happening in, I think in India also it started happening in gas sector. So we see a huge growth in water, gas and heating as a utility, right? Beyond electricity. And what we believe, and that's our assessment, understanding is that while overall it will be 3.5% growth in the electricity by 2031 in terms of the CAGR, but water will be double the digits, double the size of electricity. Obviously the denominator is quite low as compared to electricity, but we see a huge growth in water, and especially in developed countries like Europe, Australia, US and few other places, we think that the water smart meters will exceed the number of electricity smart meters, and that's a big statement. Nobody could have imagined that water sector smart metering will be more than electricity water sector, but that's going to be a reality, primarily because it's quite expensive as compared to electricity in some of the mature countries. Then we see a rise in gas and heating as well. So this is what the chart shows you that it's around $20 billion by 2031 only on the smart metering. Okay, last slide on the investor perspective. If I am an investor, or if you are a beneficiary in the sense, if you are a meter manufacturing company or technology supplier, I think money, there are a lot of guys who can give you the money as a loan, as a grant or whatever the terms can be. I think the biggest value unlock is obviously the dollars that comes to your kitty, but more importantly, what do you do with that money? And I think that's the biggest thing that investors are looking at. I as an investor can give, say for example, $100 million to company A, company B and company C. The way I differentiate between A, B and C is how the capital will be deployed, how the capital will be leveraged. So it's all about leverage ratio. And what we are seeing is that from an investor perspective, the money that I give, if it is able to create a scalable, sustainable leverage, then that's what attracts me. So say for example, in Malaysia, which used to be a capex-led model, now we are seeing it as a service model like India, right? There are so many players who are not able, whose balance sheet is not that strong offer products on as a service model. Can this private capital coming from an investor be leveraged some part of it to penetrate in that market space? So it determines the go-to-market strategy. We'll talk about this. Some of the utilities are looking at what products I should do. So today, say for example, company X is providing only comms, company Y is providing only meters and so on and so forth. What we see here is that how do we extend that portfolio to give end-to-end services? And for me, for a player to make that happen, he needs capital, and that's how the capital is being deployed, right? So from an investor perspective, it's not only about money, it's also about the leverage that we are creating on a long-term and sustainable basis. Okay, on the utility perspective, and I think this timer is for me, so I will go a bit fast. On the utility perspective, if I am a utility, I have so many things that I have to look about. What's my procurement strategy? What's the business model that I'm talking about? Should I go big bang? Should I start with a pilot? And there's so many questions in the mind of utility. India is a mature market in terms of the understanding because RAP, DRP, and then RGG, whatever, like IPDS, and there's so many programs. So from that perspective, India is quite mature in an understanding perspective. But if you look at beyond India, the basic questions are still there, right? Now what this slide shows you is, first is the macro variable. What that means is, and obviously this is global, this is not only specific for India. So first is which country you're talking about. India is a different story as compared to Malaysia, as compared to Singapore, and so on and so forth, as compared to Bangladesh. The size of utility, like in India we have 74 utilities, in South Africa we have single ESCOM, right? And that makes that totally changes the procurement strategy and the business models. Type of functionality, prepaid, postpaid, hybrid, and so on and so forth. And then also the fuel, whether it's electricity, or also a water, gas, and heating, right? With those macro variables in mind, the number one thing that utility want from an ecosystem player is, number one is the business models, right? India is a good example of per meter per month. We see that happening in Malaysia. Bangladesh is talking about this, but I think they are still on capex model as of now. So what's the business model? How are you giving the products? How is utility buying the services? It all depends on the impact that smart metering creates. End-to-end capability I talked about in terms of meter, software, services, and analytics. Comms model, obviously we will talk about GPRS, RF, and so on and so forth. I'll spend a bit of a time on use cases. And my experience when I talk to the various governments and CEOs and ministers and so on and so forth, and this may not be a good statement in your ears, but they say that smart metering is not a panacea. Yes, smart metering is helping me to get my revenues month and so on and so forth. Is that the only benefit? The answer is no. The real answer is how, apart from my revenue generation, I'm getting my data. What do I do with data? And that's where the whole story of use cases come into the play. I will tell you a private sector distribution company, a very large, around $500 million company, in an emerging market, $500 million is a decent amount. He said to me, Sudhanshu, today I as a discom and you as a consumer, the only relationship is that I give you electricity and you pay it to me. But what I'm seeing in the market is that I as a utility, I want you to be my captive consumer as a consumer, because your solar rooftop, your EV charging, it's not in India, but I'm talking about the global market, the smart, the EV that you have, which can be V2G at times of peak, vehicle to grid, so all the behind the meter activities, the heating, the solar rooftop, and so on and so forth. So my relationship with consumer is changing. And how do I nurture the relationship is using the data. And data comes from smart metering. So I did a reverse engineering to say how smart metering is able to take you to a next level of growth. The growth will not come from electricity because it's a regulatory tariff normally in other countries, or it's competitive. The growth in terms of the EBITDA improvement, the profitability comes from electricity plus. And that's where data is becoming very important, and hence the importance of use cases, right? And I've seen some of the clients classically using the data generated by smart metering in terms of capex optimization and so on and so forth. And some of them use it only for revenue generation. And then the warranty, we all understand that. So that's one part of the product capability. But if you look at the delivery model, I don't know if you can see at the bottom side, the type of contract we all understand, price points, which is typically, and I will talk about this, a delivery model, delivery time, and after sales support. So this is what is the expectation from a utility perspective, and I think we have officials from utilities, so we'll hear more of them. But I think that's how I would like to summarize the key perspective from a utilities landscape in terms of the ecosystem expectations. I will go a bit fast on this, but this is typically a use cases, and there might be 100 use cases. India might be using maybe 20 of them, but then I see other countries using, depending on the business challenges that they have created different use cases. One thing, as I mentioned, is around DER and the RES, which the example that I just gave, right? So the only message on this slide is that smart metering is obviously a solution, but it's not the solution only for revenue generation, but also for doing a lot of other business decision making and innovativeness. Last slide from my side. I won't get into details. What it shows is a typical buying behavior from utilities. While vendor X, vendor Y would have many different features, many different price points. But what it captures is six key parameters from a buying perspective, the TCO being one of them, and you can see as you go towards the right, it's high. So price is important. If we were talking about 3 years back, I think price was not the only thing, it was also a techno-commercial capabilities in the offering. But lately, I think because of the huge market, it's becoming a bit, it's getting more commoditized, and hence price plays an important role, right? So TCO, which is a price, and overall price is obviously a single most important criteria, whether it's a small utility or a large utility. And just to classify, small utility is around 100K customer, 1 lakh customers, and large, medium is 1 lakh to 1 million, and so on and so forth. Interoperability is an issue, and alignment with specifications is important. I won't get into all of them, but I think a couple of messages here, the TCO, the interoperability, and I know these are issues in India and these are issues globally as well, and also the end-to-end services. Point number 5, especially if you are a small utility, because you don't have the capability to do analytics and business BI and so on and so forth, right? So that's what we wanted to capture from a perspective that what's the buying behavior for some of the utilities. I'm over time, so I'll stop here. I guess there's a panel session. I'm happy to take questions there. I can take questions if time permits. I can take questions right now. Okay. Sure, please go ahead.
How do you see the role of RF planning tools in the ecosystem of... Hi, my name is Hani Charnalia. I'm from EDX Wireless USA. I want to ask you a question. Where do you see the role of RF planning tools in the context of AMI and non-AMI smart metering deployment, globally as well as in India, if you know?
Yeah, so number one, it all depends. As a consultant, my first answer would be it depends. I will tell you why it depends. It depends on the maturity of the RF network that you have in the country, and you're talking about global. So if you look at the countries in Africa where smart metering is picking up, I don't think that they have the maturity, right? They can't go for PLC. That's a big question there. But I would say, let me give you some examples, then I will give you answers. If you look at the southern Europe where I live, so countries like Spain, Italy, Portugal, and so on and so forth, we all were on PLC. And we are now, while it's open bidding, but the preference is to go for RF, right? There's no right or wrong. I'm not advocating RF. I'm just saying it depends. Because the quality of the RF network is quite better. The technologies are quite matured and well established. If you look at the east side of the Asia, or maybe APAC regions, I think the preference have been a particular technology, but they are open. So my one statement answer would be it depends. It depends on the assets that you have defined and the maturity of those countries, right? Does that answer the question? I won't advocate a technology, but it depends. That was my first statement. Yeah. But yes, I see a lot of positive movement on that.
Hello sir, good morning. My name is Gyan Prakash. I am from Electrify Ahmedabad. My question is, what you see the difference in gas metering, whether the interoperability is there in Europe and America and how it will be done for gas and water?
Yeah, good question. I won't have a complete answer honestly, but let me try to attempt it. If I look at it from a smart metering perspective, whether it's electricity, gas, fuel, whatever fuel, I think the metrology remains, after the metrology, the communication part remains the same. So say for example, I am living in Madrid, I would have a gas meter on smart metering, I would have a different electricity meter on smart metering. Interoperability wise, I haven't heard a lot of issues because whatever issues are there for electricity will remain also for gas or water, right? Because there are different procurements at different point of time, different meter makes, different technologies, different protocols. So interoperability is a challenge, but it is not specific to gas or water. It's universal for as it is for electricity, but with a disclaimer that this is my initial view, it's not my final view.
Because in electricity, most of the countries are following DLMS, and there is a standard, but I am not sure whether that is followed by the gas and water as well.
Just being blunt, DLMS Ecosystem is there, but we still have faced interoperability issues, right? I think that's to me the reality. Even you define the standards, you still have the interoperability issue. Yeah, the problem is significantly reduced, but not eliminated. There are no standards for water and gas, I agree with you. But as I mentioned, I am not expert on that, so I really can't give that answer. Sorry, but I can get back to you on that. Yeah. The mic, please. My pleasure. So is Sanjay from?
Lighthouse.
Okay.
They are OEMs of meters. Just to carry forward what Gyan asked, any lessons learned from unified smart utility like gas, water, electricity? Has any geography implemented?
Yeah, so that too, the good question. 2 or 3 learnings. I think number 1 learning is how do you leverage the investment that you are doing. See, one is the meter, one is the metrology, like whether it's water, gas, electricity, heating, whatever. One is the measuring of that particular fuel or whatever you call it. Then is the comms part and is the backend analytics part. Now, I as Sudhanshu, if I have water and electricity on a smart meeting, my pattern should be very similar. If I am out for 1 month on a vacation to India, I should have 0 reading. So my sense is, the first learning is how do I leverage the common, how best I can use the common infrastructure, communication and so on so forth. That's number 1. Number 2, can I deploy a dual meter? So what happens is, there are meters which are dual fuel. Is that the business? So maybe it's around $210, yeah. Whereas if I put single phase, it may be 87 or 80, whatever, depending on the country, and another might be 150. So it's more than 210. So I think number 2 learning is, can I have a dual fuel? Is that a feasible option? If yes, are the products available in the market, the manufacturers? That's number 2. Number 3, what I would do is that the learning for this is, and that's a business case question. If a utility, like Endesa is a discount for me, Endesa is giving me electricity, do I really need water? Or do I really need gas? Well, Endesa is giving me gas also. What is the value you create out of that additional? Because see, one issue is to have a consumption analysis so that you can do your procurement planning, you can do your capex planning and so on and so forth. But if Sudhanshu already has electricity, and you get water, say for example water or gas on a monthly basis, what incremental benefit you have to have a half-hourly gas or water readings? Now that business case question has to be dealt carefully. If it does not make, because it comes with an additional cost, it's not only capex of 150 or whatever dollars, it's also some part. So number 3 learning my sense is the business case around having an additional smart meter when the objective is to really do electricity and I get the pattern. Does that answer the question? Yeah. Okay, I think we are over time, so thank you very much.